Welcome back, everybody, to this week's edition of the Spread Option Podcast here on the CFB Nation channel. With me, as always, my guy, Vince Dario. I'm your host, Trevor Trowbridge, and there is a fun week of games going on. And yes, Notre Dame has a bye week, but honestly, now that I'm on, I guess, this side of the screen, I'm not just a fan, I'm honestly kind of a fan of bye weeks because it's definitely less stress. That is for sure, Vince.
It's not kind of a fan. We are huge fans of bye weeks because the team not only gets a chance to recharge the batteries and get healthy and catch up on some sleep and all of those things, so do we. And not that it's all about us, but at the same time, it's kind of all about us. So I'm okay with not being up until 3:30 on a Saturday night / Sunday morning. Be okay.
Well, one of my best friends is getting married on Saturday, so I can't guarantee the early night sleep. But
he was smart enough to do it on a bye week, unlike somebody else that we know that is also on Irish Breakdown.
Ooh, well, when he told me when they didn't have a date locked down, he was talking to me. He was like, "Yeah, I think we're going to do it sometime at the end of October." And I was like, "All right, well, one weekend I can absolutely be there, and the other weekend I'll be there for the ceremony and part of dinner, and then I'm leaving.
And then I'm out."
So shout out to Notre Dame for having a night game. But this week on the Spread Option, we have a lot of awesome games coming your way. As always, we are going to start off with hit or miss. We're recapping what went well, what didn't go well last week, and it's a mixed bag, I guess you could say. Mixed bag. First game that we talked about, Vince, we talked about LSU on the road against Vanderbilt, fighting Clark Lees, and they got the job done. And things are not looking too great in Death Valley right now for old BK. But what is looking good, that's okay. That's all right. But what is looking good, Vince, were the two player props that we had in this game. First one that we talked about, Diego Pavia over 56.5 rushing yards. That ended up hitting death, taxes, and LSU not being able to defend mobile quarterbacks. Diego Pavia finished the evening with 86 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, which may or may not rear its ugly head again today when we talk about LSU's spectacular rush defense against mobile quarterbacks. But to give them some flowers, we did talk about LSU's running back, Caden Durham. His over-under was set at 55.5. We told you guys to take the over, and that ended up hitting kind of just barely, but a win's a win. He finished with 59 rushing yards. So good day for player props if you bet on the LSU at Vandy game.
I remember, a few years back where I would be very nervous about Notre Dame playing against mobile quarterbacks. Not so much worried about that anymore. And now that would be people that live in Louisiana's problem. So, yes, always take a look at mobile quarterbacks when they're playing against a Brian Kelly coach team.
Love it. I absolutely love it. Not our problem anymore, Vince.
Nope.
Not our problem.
It's not. How about Ole Miss, Georgia? How'd we do Ole Miss and Georgia? And this was an interesting game, and we'll talk about how this game in particular bit me in the behind, but it also bit us when it came to our player props.
Yeah, man. I had a feeling that the second that I talked about this in last week's show, the first prop that we talked about was taking Georgia's under in point total, 31.5. And I did all this research and I was like, this is why, because you look at what they've done against Power 4 opponents. Well, last week against Ole Miss, that was also the week that Gunnar Stockton felt like putting on a Heisman-level performance. And Georgia's offense ended up scoring 43 points. Gunnar Stockton had 4 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. And Ole Miss's defense made him look like somebody who should be invited to New York at the end of the regular season. So that prop missed. And unfortunately, the other one that we talked about in this game also missed. Trinidad Chambliss, just a great name for a quarterback. But we talked about taking his over 45.5 rushing yards. That missed just barely, but he had 42 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, Vince. That stinks.
That's a little bit of a bad beat there to miss that by 3.5 yards. And a little bit of trivia for you. Trinidad Chambliss's dad is a principal in South Bend. So there you go.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because Trinidad, he transferred from Ferris State, right?
He did. Yeah, sure did. So okay. I remember, back, I don't believe he's a principal anymore, but he was a principal back when I was coaching over at one of the South Bend schools, and he would show us highlights of his son that was living up in Michigan. He's like, oh, check out my son, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And now he's the Ole Miss quarterback. So, pretty impressive stuff. It was like,
Yeah,
oh, look at your son.
I would say so. That is really impressive. That's awesome.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Man.
So anyway, our next game, Tennessee at Alabama. Ty Simpson has been doing some pretty impressive things, but not impressive enough last week against Tennessee.
No, Tennessee's defense is really bad. I was expecting Alabama to blow the doors off of them, which final score would indicate that they did. They were also helped out by the end of the first half, like a 98-yard pick six for a touchdown. I saw that video on replay on X, and the crowd was going crazy. Unfortunately, Ty Simpson, his over-under was set at 288.5 passing yards. That ended up missing. Finished the day with 253 passing yards. And then last week I talked about, well, he has to throw to somebody. You couldn't even bet on Ryan Williams at that point in time. And Ryan Williams ended up being their lead receiver. So
of course
that's
did.
pretty par for the course. But one person that I was confident in was Isaiah Horton, their big boundary receiver, the transfer from Miami. His over-under was set at 50.5 receiving yards. I wish I could lie to you all.
He just
say
missed
that
it.
It was close.
Just missed it.
He did just miss it. Only 49 yards away from his over-under set at 50.5. He had one catch for 2 yards and a touchdown.
Hey, got to score.
So we got in the end zone. That was his contribution for the afternoon for the Crimson Tide. So that ended up missing. But thankfully, Vince, we got back on the right track, sort of, against in the USC Notre Dame game, which was one that, first of all, I'm amazed even there was no weather delay.
I'm shocked. Shocked.
I texted you guys before the game, and I was like, what are the odds this actually kicks off?
Yeah.
I mean, it was looking that bad. Like, they were sending out weather alerts for lightning during the tailgate. They're like, hey, find shelter, and no, you can't bring beer into the Hesburgh Library. So that was a lot of the alerts that we were getting. But one of the player props that we talked to you guys about, Jadarian Price, anytime touchdown. Our guy, number 24, made it to the end zone twice last Saturday. He had 2 total on the day, 1 rushing and 1 100-yard kick return for a touchdown. You would have thought that based on their last trip to South Bend, the Trojans wouldn't have given Jadarian Price an opportunity to return a kickoff, but thankfully they did.
That's the same coaching staff, so they're just as silly, I guess. And I feel like he got cheated out of a yard or two, by the way. I feel like he caught that a yard or two into the end zone, but we're splitting hairs. It was still an amazing return, and death taxes in Price hitting the end zone is pretty much a guarantee. I think it's only been one time that he has not gotten into the end zone this season. So pretty solid bet on that one.
I do think in college, if I remember, and I could be wrong, but anything fielded in the end zone, whether it's a kick return or a pick six, is always just 100 yards. I don't think it's like the NFL where it's like a 104-yard kick return.
Okay.
Because Xavier Watts' interception last year against USC was also recorded as a 100-yard pick six, even though he caught it about 2 yards deep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
I think.
Been following the sport for a long time, and I just learned something. So there you go.
Hey, that's all right. I just learned that Trinidad Chambliss's dad was a principal in South Bend. So we're learning a lot of different things today here, Vince. You were all good, my man. Unfortunately, we did talk about 2 player props in the Notre Dame USC game. The second one, I was very confident in my guy, Eli Raridan, and I feel bad because every time I feel like I sit down and I put together a compelling argument for Vince to put Eli Raridan back inside of a parlay, that's when it gets let down. His over-under was set at 36.5 receiving yards. That missed. He ended the day with 1 catch for 5 yards, but weather, I think, played a pretty big factor.
Yeah. And that's honestly why I stayed away from pretty much everything this past weekend when Notre Dame related anyway, was because it was just too unpredictable as to what the weather was going to be, what that was going to look like, all of that. It was just too hairy to kind of jump into the old betting pool. But again, JD Price getting in the end zone, good. Eli Raridan catching more than 1 catch, bad. So I told my buddy, I said, look, any receiving prop for Notre Dame, stay away from it. Any rushing prop for Notre Dame, take it. And that ended up being pretty much the case on Saturday. So, that's what happens when there's weather, man.
Well, next time it rains, we'll just take Jeremiah Love's alternate rushing yards at 200 and we'll see what happens.
And just nail it. Just nail it.
And he'll get it by more than 28 yards.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Well, Vince, let's get into our locks and dogs of the week. This ended up being a pretty good week for us in terms of locks of the week. I had Iowa's money line against Penn State, and that hit. Hawkeyes won 25-24. Just a rough look for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously heading in the wrong direction, and they no longer have a head coach. So a lot of issues over there in Happy Valley. It's not so happy in the Valley. So my lock of the week was Georgia Tech. They were actually the underdog. So they were getting 1.5 at Duke. And that hit no problem because Georgia Tech won outright 27-18. So that's a big winner for the lock of the week. And I think that's 2 in a row for me. So I'm feeling pretty good about my locks of the week right now.
I would too. You're definitely trending in the right direction. Also, just to throw a tad bit of more shade, Penn State still has yet to beat a Power 4 opponent this year.
That is correct.
And their next couple of games are on the road against Ohio State and at home against Indiana. I don't see that ending anytime soon, unfortunately for them.
Nice. It's just fantastic.
Unfortunately for them. Dogs of the week. I actually went 2 for 2 here. Locks of the weekend, dogs of the week. My dog of the week was actually the Friday night game. I said to take Louisville plus 13.5 versus Miami. That hit, and if anybody bet on Louisville's money line, you also would have won. Louisville won the game 24-21 on the road in a game where Carson Beck decided to be Carson Beck. Unfortunately, that didn't come on August 31st. It's a different conversation for a different day. That my dog of the week hit.
I mean, Carson Becked finally. It took half a season for him to get there, but he finally did it. And it was ugly. And they should have won that game. I mean, he threw 4 interceptions and they only lost by a field goal. So that pretty much tells you how that game went. And it's unfortunate if you're a Miami fan, but very fortunate if you're a Louisville fan. If you're a Notre Dame fan, Miami can't lose again. So you got some Miami fans out there that have Notre Dame as well. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. But my dog of the week, you want to talk about a bad beat? I had Ole Miss plus 7.5 at Georgia. I knew this one was going to be close. I wasn't sure about it, but I felt good, so I went ahead and did it. Georgia wins by 8. So I missed it by a half a point. But a half a point's a half a point. And so I dropped my second dog of the week of the season. Ole Miss let me down. They couldn't get one more point out of the deal. They lose by 8, 7.5 point spread.
Oh, that's just a bad beat right there, man. That's unfortunate. That is unfortunate. Well, quick update and record. We like to keep a running total here. Player props are sitting at 35 wins, 33 losses. We're still in the green there. So if you've been following player props, you've been betting on them, you're still in the money. Locks of the week. Vince and I are both heading in the right direction. We're both 4 and 5. We're in this together, brother.
Yes.
We are absolutely in this
500,
together.
man. I got 500 in my sights.
Boom. There we go. Hopefully this is the week. Dogs of the week. We got back in the right direction. Vince and I are both over 500 in our dogs of the week. I am at 5-4. Vince is at 7-2. Where, yes, the loss stings this past week, but Vince 7-2 is still phenomenal.
It's good. It's good, but we need to get back on the winning way with our dogs of the week. And I'm not sure about this week, but we'll see how it goes. But let's get into part 2, the countdown. We got 4 games to talk about, Trev. First one, we got a lot of ranked games in this one. And this week is going to be fun. That's the great thing about a bye week for your favorite team is you get to kind of sit back, relax, and watch a bunch of football that you may not have had an opportunity to watch. This is a good one to watch. Ole Miss on the road at Oklahoma. It's number 8 versus number 13. Oklahoma is favored in this game, minus 5.5. So they're given 5.5 points. The money line is also to Oklahoma. You get minus 200 odds on the money line, and the over-under is set at 52.5.
Definitely some interesting lines. This is back-to-back weeks where Ole Miss has been the higher-ranked team, but underdogs, according to Vegas, which I thought was pretty interesting. And this one has a lot of – we previewed this earlier today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. And this game has a lot of implications, a lot of different things riding on it, which means the player props that you bet on should be relatively fun in this one. And the first one that we're going to talk about is Quan Lacey, the running back for Ole Miss. I like him for an anytime touchdown. He has scored in every game this season except for the upset scare against Washington State, which in games like that, different type of trap games, I don't put too much emphasis on what happens there, especially when it's the outlier. He scored 5 rushing touchdowns against the 4 SEC opponents that he's played. I like Quan Lacey to get into the end zone in this one. And it's all been rushing. I don't think he has a receiving touchdown on the year. Okay. So that one's going to be I like the outlook on that one. The second one, we're switching over to the Oklahoma sideline, and I always hesitate to take players unders, especially in ranked matchups like this. But here's what I'm looking at. John Mateer's passing yards is set over under 235.5, and I like his under here. He's not even a month removed from right hand surgery. Ole Miss has only allowed one passer over 250 yards in the last 4 games, and really they've only allowed one over 230 yards in the last 4 games. Last week against Georgia, and it was the Gunnar Stockton breakout game, and he still went for 289. So he got it. He threw a lot of touchdowns. He rushed one in, but it's not like he threw for 350 yards. He threw for 289. John Mateer just hasn't looked the same since coming back from injury, Vince. So I'm staying away from that one.
Yeah, John Mateer is the giant question mark in this matchup, frankly. And if he was playing the way he was playing at the beginning of the season, then I would agree with the 5.5 point give here by Oklahoma. I just don't know if John Mateer is where he needs to be. And so taking the under here actually makes a lot of sense. And it doesn't make a lot of, the 5.5 points don't make a whole lot of sense to me. I'll just say that. And so taking the under here does make a lot of sense. What are you staying away from here? I have a feeling it's somebody that we've already talked about tonight.
It is the guy with the awesome name, Trinidad Chambliss. I'm staying away from just his props in general. He's a dual threat quarterback. He can move the ball with his arm and with his legs. I'm not staying away from him because of his ability. However, Austin Simmons, the quarterback who started for Ole Miss, is available this week. Now, I don't know if Kiffin would pull the plug on Chambliss, but it's also not impossible. You know what I mean? So they're on the road. Excuse me. They're on the road against Oklahoma. I could see a scenario where they go back with old reliable who started the season for him to see what he can get done in this offense. And that would just be a bad beat. So I'm staying away from his props entirely because I just don't know how this one's going to unfold. So staying away from Trinidad Chambliss, unfortunately.
Makes a lot of sense. Game number 2 to talk about. Number 4, Alabama goes on the road to South Carolina. South Carolina, the enigma of the 2025 season. The big 3 in this one, Alabama favored by 11.5. The money line obviously goes to the Crimson Tide as well at minus 480. Not a great number there if you're betting Alabama on the money line. The over-under is kind of low at 47.5. Thoughts on the big 3 before we jump into the props?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I kind of thought the over-under was set a little low here. South Carolina's pass defense is relatively decent. I don't think their run defense is anything special, and Alabama's been able to put points on the board against every single team that they've played. I mean, even I guess in their low-scoring output with Missouri, who has a really good defense, better than South Carolina's, the final score was 27-24. So the over would have hit in that game as well. Yep. We're not talking about it today, but out of any of the big 3, I would definitely look at taking the over in this game. The fact that it's 47.5 was pretty shocking, Vince.
Yeah, it's low. I expected it to at least be in the 50s, but any over-under in the 40s is very enticing to take the over for sure. Yeah. So props today. What do we got?
First one, I like Jam Miller over 58.5 rushing yards. He's Alabama's running back. Look, the Gamecocks have allowed 101 rusher. They allowed a 101-yard rusher to Oklahoma, a 70-yard rusher to LSU, and a 112-yard rusher against Kentucky in their last 3 games. Jam Miller is a player that has to start getting it going against Vanderbilt, who has honestly a pretty stout rush defense. I believe they have the number 12 rush defense in the country. They've only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns this season. One of those came to Jam Miller. I think the Crimson Tide are going to look to try to establish a little bit on the ground this week. So I like Jam Miller's over and 58.5 rushing yards. That's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely dig it. You got a Ty Simpson one on here as well, I think.
I sure do. I was surprised. This was the first week, I think, honestly, I think since the Florida State game, where his over-under passing touchdowns was 1.5. He's had at least 2 passing touchdowns in every game this season. I mean, and no, like, oh, but this game it looked like this game it looked like that. He's just thrown at least 2 passing touchdowns through 7 games. I mean, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in college football this season. He's thrown 18 passing touchdowns in 7 games. So I love Ty Simpson's over in passing touchdowns here. That is their red zone offense, Vince. If you've watched Alabama play it all this season, they're running a lot of different stick routes. They're running a lot of short, like crosser concepts around and in the red zone. So I like Ty Simpson's over 1.5 passing touchdowns here.
Okay. What are we staying away from?
Look, I'm staying away from Lenora Sellers' rushing yards. I know it looks juicy. It's set at 19.5. And for a dual threat quarterback like Lenora Sellers, I get it. But look, he's been so hit or miss this season. In the last 4 games, he's finished with -9, 19, 81, and -28. And now Alabama's defensive line is now healthy again. And I could see them trying to get after Lenora Sellers. So I'm staying away from his over-under rushing yards, not touching it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's always interesting to see how South Carolina wants to use Lenora Sellers game to game. I just don't feel like there's a whole lot of consistency there. And your rushing stat kind of tells the tale. So that'll be an interesting one to see, and definitely a good one to stay away from. Game number 3. Number 15, Missouri, goes on the road to number 10. Yes, that's correct. Number 10, Vanderbilt, also known as the Fighting Clark Lees. They are in the top 10. IU and Vanderbilt are in the top 10 in college football. I don't even know what to say. It's not a baseball poll. This is an actual college football poll. And they're both in the top 10. So it's a game we're going to talk about. The big 3, Vanderbilt, again, for the second week in a row, favored in the SEC. They're favored by 2.5 at home on the money line. You get -142 odds. The over-under set at 53.5. Anything stand out to you in the big 3?
I mean, really, the only thing that stands out is how shocking it is that Vanderbilt in back-to-back weeks is favored in ranked games in the SEC.
I mean, yeah. I doubted them last week, and they pulled it off and beat LSU. I mean, why can't they beat Missouri? Why can't they?
I mean, look, man, it's impressive what Clark Lee's put together. Here's something that I didn't expect them to say, or expect Brian to say today. We were previewing this game, and Brian was like, "Yeah, I just don't know if Mizzou has the horses to compete with Vanderbilt." How crazy! But he's not wrong. That's the thing. That's what's crazy. Like, I mean, look, man, that's the biggest thing that stands out to me in the big 3 is the fact that Vandy is favored by 2.5 points. Now, you get the 3-point bump for being at home, so Vegas views this as a pick'em game, but still, if you would have told me that Missouri would have had 1 loss going into the Vanderbilt game and was ranked in the top 15 and Vanderbilt would have been favored, I would have been like, yeah, I think you're remembering a little bit too much of last year's team.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt's also 6-1 and just knocked off number 10 LSU last week. Yeah. So here we are. But we do have 2 player props to talk about, Vince. First one, quarterback from Missouri, Bo Pribula. I like his over and rushing yards here. It's set at 28.5. Look, this is a must-win game against Vanderbilt. I think if Missouri loses this one, track doesn't get any easier for them. I think they still have to play Texas A&M, and I think they still also have to play LSU, I believe. So it's not like the track gets any easier for them. So this is a must-win game. Yeah, they still have number 3 Texas A&M and number 13 Oklahoma on their schedule, and they already have a loss. I think Pribula is going to have to be a playmaker in this game. He had 28 rushing yards last game and 61 against Alabama. I like Bo Pribula's over in rushing yards here, Vince.
Well, and a name that we have spoken into existence many times on this show, Diego Pavia. His passing yards are set at 217.5, which is a pretty low number. But you're taking the under.
I am. And I think this is going to be a game where both quarterbacks are going to have to make plays with their legs. But I look at this, and when you look at the numbers, they don't lie to you. Diego Pavia has gone under 200 passing yards against all 4 P4 opponents he's faced. He had 160 against LSU, 198 against Alabama, 177 against South Carolina, and 193 against Virginia Tech. And that was Virginia Tech before they fired Brent Pry. And that was before they kind of galvanized around the firing of their head coach. And I could argue that Mizzou might have the best passing defense of that bunch. Could argue that. It's close between LSU and Bama, but I don't like Diego Pavia's over here. I'm taking his under at 217.5.
Okay. Very good. What are you staying away from here?
I am staying away from an Ahmad Hardy anytime touchdown. Now, he's like the NCAA's leader in rushing yards this season. He has scored in every game this season except for Alabama. But with that being said, Vanderbilt ranks number 5 in the country in rushing touchdowns allowed. They have 3 on the season. Could he make it to the end zone? Sure. The frustrating thing about anytime touchdowns, though, Vince, there's no amount of yards, there's no amount of receptions. If you don't cross that white chalk, it doesn't count.
Right.
And I could very much see something like that happening like this again. I mean, the other best rush defense that Missouri faced this season was Alabama, and he was held out of the end zone. So I'm staying away from this one.
Okay. Final game we're going to talk about today is game number 4. It is number 3 Texas A&M at number 20 LSU going into Death Valley. Is it a night game? Probably it's got to be a night game, right?
Oh, yeah, 7:30 p.m. kickoff.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, so the big 3. Texas A&M favored on the road, -2.5. Obviously also favored on the money line, -146 odds. The over-under at 49.5. We talked about that 4 being in the first number, 5 being in the first number. So interested to see what you think about that over-under.
The over-under is very, very interesting. The other thing to point out here with the big 3, and I got to remember if Brian said this was the year, but I think he said that the last time Texas A&M beat LSU in Death Valley was like 1994.
Oof.
Yeah, so the fact that Texas A&M is favored in this game at -2.5, I think that tells you a little bit of something, though, about Mike Elko and the Aggies.
What year were you born?
97.
Okay. That's what I thought. That was middle school for me. But yeah, 94 is a long time ago. So A&M's going to have to show up here on the road.
Okay, 94, you were in middle school, or 97, you were in middle school, you said, right?
No, 94. 97, I was a sophomore or junior in high school.
That's cool. We would have hung out. I guarantee it.
We would have.
Yeah, dude. Don't worry about it. But no, man, I think it's cool that Texas A&M is favored again. I think it speaks volumes about Mike Elko and the job that he's done down in College Station in year 2. 2 player props here, Vince. First one, I like Marcel Reed's over in rushing yards here. It's over-under set at 31.5. Like I said at the start of the show, death taxes and LSU's inability to defend mobile quarterbacks. Diego Pavia had 86 rushing yards against him. Chambliss had 71 against him. Marcel Reed has been over 31 rushing yards in 5 of the 7 games this season, and he went for 62 and 3 touchdowns last season against LSU on the ground.
Wow. That might be like the best prop of the night. Put like a star next to that one. You know, check it off of your list like that. I feel like that one might be the lock of the night in props.
I put in a parlay already, and I took his alternate rushing yards at 40.
No, you went up. You got some better odds is what that means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm hunting. I'm hunting this week, that's for sure. The second player prop, and we're sticking on the ground game here. Flip side of the ball, Caden Durham. He's honestly, I went back and looked. I've talked about Caden Durham quite a bit this season. Now, you could argue he's been the only bright spot of LSU's offense because I'm not really betting on Garrett Nussmeier. The only Garrett Nussmeier prop I told you guys to bet on was to take his under in passing yards, and I think that hit by like 89 yards.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing that. Well, actually, never mind. I am doing that this week, but we'll get to that in a second. Caden Durham. I like his over here. It's set at 50.5 rushing yards. I think Texas A&M's rush defense is still a little suspect, honestly. I mean, you look at the last 3 games against South Carolina. I mean, he's gone over 50 yards against every Power 4 opponent. 59 against Vandy, 70 against South Carolina, 93 against Florida, and then 74 against Clemson. And like I said, Texas A&M's rush defense, I don't think is the – I don't think it's the premier spot of this defense, which is odd for a Mike Elko-led team.
Yeah.
I think that's a little odd, but I do like his over in rushing yards here.
Well, you kind of gave us a little insight into what you're staying away from. You kind of mentioned it, but Garrett Nussmeier, his passing yards set at 231.5. We going over, we going under?
Well, I'm actually staying away from it, Vince. And here's
There
why.
it is.
I don't know which one is going to take the day. Nuss has only gone over 230 passing yards once in the last 3 games against South Carolina. Texas A&M has allowed a 230 plus passer in 2 of their last 3 games. So again, which one takes today? I don't know, which is why I'm not going to put any money on it. I'm staying away from Garrett Nussmeier passing yards.
When you've got stats that don't line up like that, that's when you stay away. And I think that's a very, very smart no play by you, sir. All right. Best part of the night. Locks of the week and dogs of the week. This is interesting because you and I had a very similar dog of the week, but I had to go a different direction. But we're going to do locks of the week first. Who do you have, Trev, as your lock of the week as you try to get back to 500?
It's a lot of pressure here, Vince.
I know, right?
My lock of the week, I think Virginia covers. Their spread right now is set at minus 10.5 over North Carolina. Look, USC has given up a lot of points against, and in my notes, I put quality offenses. I need to just take out quality and just put any offense that they faced, like really any team with a pulse. Like they gave up 38 to Clemson, 34 to UCF, and 48 to TCU. And I'm sure you're asking, well, Trev, how many points did North Carolina score in those games? And I'm here to tell you that it's not a lot. I don't think they reached over 20 points in any of those games. So if there's one thing we know about Virginia's offense, or if there's one thing we know about Virginia in its entirety, it's that their offense is legit. I like the Cavs to cover here. I like their spread at minus 10.5.
I think that's a great call. Anything that is anti-North Carolina, I think is a good take here. And I think this is a good take. Bill Belichick's in way over his head. And if he's averaging 20 points a game, that's great in the NFL. That's not great in college. And so I shouldn't say it's great in the NFL. It will win you a lot of games in the NFL because it's just not that high scoring. So, but it's not going to work in the ACC. So I like that one. I like Virginia, especially in this matchup for sure. My lock of the week, I'm headed out west, and it's still a conference game, which is just weird. Illinois has been a bit of an enigma of the Big Ten this year. Okay, they're up, they're down, they're left, they're right. Who is Illinois? I don't know, but they're ranked this year. Not this year. They're ranked this week towards the bottom, but they are the underdogs going on the road to Washington. And Washington, I've needed Washington to make a play for me over the last few weeks to win some games that maybe, they were close to favored in, but then not favored in. And it was like, okay, well, who is Washington? Are they going to be able to pull the upset? Are they going to be able to do this, that, and the other? And frankly, it's been the other an awful lot, but they're favored in this one, which is interesting to me. So I am going to take Illinois. Give me the 3.5 points. I'm taking Illinois in the points. Okay. Going on the road to Washington. I think they get the win outright. I almost went money line with Illinois, but if they're going to give me the points, I'm going to take them. So let's roll with the Illini over the Huskies.
Okay. I like that. Vince. That's a juicy lock of the week. Washington has only lost once at home since 2021. That came this past year against Ohio State. I like that.
You're trying to make me regret my choice. I get it. It's okay. I have no problem with that. Washington has let me down. I feel like, not that I've actually bet on them or whatever, but I thought they could take Michigan. I thought they could give Ohio State a game. They didn't. You know what I mean? And I just like Illinois here. So let's go here. Let's go.
I like it. I like it a lot. Well, Vince, it is that time of the night, arguably your favorite time of the night. We are talking dogs of the week. For my dog of the week, we're going to the Big Ten. And yes, this is actually a conference game, as weird as it sounds. Mm-hmm. UCLA is on the road playing the Hoosiers. Right now, Indiana's favored by 25.5 points. But my dog of the week, Vince, I think the Bruins cover. Yes. I do not think that they win.
No.
Let me say that loud and clear. But I don't think they lose by almost 4 touchdowns. Look, I think UCLA has found something after they let their head coach go. And their wins haven't been fluky. I mean, they beat the brakes out of Michigan State. They beat Penn State. Like they're on a little bit of a run here.
Yeah.
This team is playing a little differently, and I do think Nico has been playing well enough. Like he is still a good enough athlete to keep them within 26 points. They're riding a 3-game win streak, and IU's last 3 wins have been by 25 against Michigan State, who UCLA beat by the same score, Oregon by 10, and Iowa by 5. I like UCLA to cover here. They're my dog of the week.
It's a great pick. It's a great pick. I had them all locked into my head as who I was going to take for my dog of the week, but you got to the document first, and so you got him as your dog of the week, which I totally 100% agree and respect. So I had to find a different one, and I spent most of my time preparing for this show trying to figure out who my dog of the week was going to be. There was a lot of options, to be perfectly honest with you. I was back and forth. I was back and forth. Okay, which way do I go? Finally, I landed on the Fighting Andrew Luck's, baby. The Stanford Trees are getting 29.5 points on the road against Miami. Look, I know Miami, they're pissed right now. They should not have won last week. No doubt about it. They let that one go. They're probably going to bounce back. They're probably going to put up a bunch of points. Okay. I get it. But this is such a big number. It's over 4 touchdowns. And Andrew Luck, man, maybe they can give the Cardinals some of his luck. And I'm hoping that they can stay inside the 30. I'm not super confident in this one, but it's a big number. Stanford they're feeling themselves a little bit after last week and their big win. So I'm taking Stanford on the road. Give me the 29.5. Go Trees. Go Christmas trees. Let's go. You got to stay inside of 30. If they can stay inside of 30, this is a win. So I'm hoping that maybe there's a rainstorm or something and Miami just can't get the points up. So come on, Stanford. Do me proud here.
Guess it would help if I unmuted myself. What I was saying, I was spitting some knowledge, dude.
I know you were. I knew you would be.
You should have heard me. I think Mario Cristobal is going to have his hands full to get this team refocused after their Friday night loss against Louisville, which actually the Louisville game was my runner-up for dog of the week. I was between that or the IU game. Louisville is 25.5-point favorites at home over Boston College. Now, Boston College is atrocious.
They're horrible. And I thought about that game too because it's a big number, right? But I was like, the Eagles just aren't very good.
No, they're not that good. But the interesting thing about this is Louisville, the last couple of years, really Jeff Brom is a head coach. He has a track record of getting an upset like Miami this past year or in 2023 against Notre Dame. Yep. In 2023 against Notre Dame, they beat the brakes off of the Irish in Louisville. Mm-hmm. The week after that, they got the doors blown off of them by a 3-9 Pitt team. Same thing happened against Purdue. Like I think when they had that big blowout win and Jeff Brown was a head coach at Purdue and they beat Ohio State in that crazy game in West Lafayette, the week after that, I'm pretty sure that they lost. I'm pretty sure that they lost to Michigan State, who was a 3-9 team, like the next week.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, Vince.
Yeah, man. Like I said, there were a couple of big numbers that were very tempting to try to get after, but the problem is the dog of those big numbers they're all on like 6-game losing streaks, and it's like they're probably not going to get over the hump here. You had Wisconsin going out to Oregon. They're getting 31.5 points out there. Oregon likes to score, and Wisconsin's terrible, and Luke Fickell's probably going to be on the unemployment line sooner than later. Again, like you said, the Louisville point spread was a big one. So, and Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, that's a big number too. It's 37.5. That's almost 40 points. Texas Tech coming off of a subpar outing last week. Oklahoma State is awful.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, they're getting 40, but do I feel confident in Oklahoma State? So it's just, just a lot of really bad teams playing some pretty decent teams. So it was kind of a mixed bag as what you would like to do. So Decided to go with the trees. They'll probably let me down because it is Stanford at the end of the day. But let's keep it inside 30, fellas. That's all you got to do.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Spread Option here on the CFB Nation channel. Make sure on your way out of here, you hit that like button. You're subscribed to this channel. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, best way to support what we do here, spread the word. Spread the word about this podcast and make sure that you're telling your friends, family members, anybody that you know loves to bet, anybody that you know loves to talk ball. Make sure you send them our way. So until next Thursday, that's Vince. I'm Trevor. We'll see you guys back here very soon on the Spread Option.